Welcome to Season 4 of My Wife the Dietitian, a fun, evidence-based weekly podcast about nutrition and healthy living.
Tune in to today's episode as we talk to Marnie Wynans, a birth doula and lactation consultant, all about the trials and tribulations of bringing a newborn into the world.
Enjoying the show? You can help others find it and enjoy it too by giving us a 5-star rating or review. If you feel like reaching out to us with a question or comment, you can send us an email at mywifetherd@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit our website at mywifethedietitian.com, as well as our social media pages. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Enjoy the show. Welcome to My Wife the Dietitian. Hello, Sandra.
Hello, Rob.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. We're talking to Marnie Wynans today.
Marnie is a doula.
Yeah, a birth doula and lactation counselor. And she's a friend of ours from at least 15 years we've known her.
Exactly.
It's so cool to talk to her.
Many moons ago.
Well, she has lots of kids of her own.
She's got kids everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got a few. She
sure does. So she has lived experience, that's for sure, with her role as a birth doula. And yeah, it's amazing what we talk about today. It gets a little personal about our own journey, but also just breastfeeding and why breast is best and the magic of breast milk and all these good nuggets.
Yeah, lots of good stuff in this one. So stay with us. We'll be right back with all sorts of great stories with Marnie Wynans.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. And we're so excited to welcome Marnie Wynans from Culture of Life. And Marnie, could you tell our listeners what you do in your work and who you help?
Sure. I am a birth doula and also a lactation counselor. So what I do is I support families throughout their pregnancy as long as when they hire me. Sometimes I get to meet people as soon as they find out they're pregnant. Sometimes I meet them closer to the end, but I support them through prenatal education and then right through their pregnancy, up through the birth, and then afterwards into that 4th trimester of postpartum and the fun of learning breastfeeding and taking care of a newborn.
Ooh, Rob,
Wow.
Did you know about the 4th trimester?
The 4th trimester. Well, that's when I'm supposed to take over. That's like the dad's job, but the dad doesn't know what he's doing, right? So that's why you're there to hold his hand, and you're like an angel in a way, kind of coming in to help, right?
Like a fairy godmother is actually how I see it.
That's totally what it is. Yeah. Because I mean, I remember day one when we first had our first child, and it was like, oh my God, we drove home from the hospital doing like 10 kilometers an hour because we thought we had this egg in the back, that was going to break. And we didn't have a clue. It was just, everything was chaos. So yeah, thank you for what you do, because it's a godsend for sure.
It is actually all my pleasure. So people thank me and I just thank them because it is so fulfilling and such a high to do this every time, like just to experience something so intimate and special and personal with a couple and to be invited into that. And then the results when they are always so beautiful and just, it's really the best job.
I bet.
Oh, I bet. Oh my gosh. And I mean, we know you personally, like how many, like you have a lot of kids of your own that you've gone through this. It's not like you don't have your own experience and skin in the game. Like tell us about like how many kids do you have?
Sure. So I have 5 sons and 4 here at 5 grandchildren. We have 1 on the way. So yeah, babies are not new to me. I sure would have loved to have had a fairy godmother / doula. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I did have a doula for my second baby, just because, that was really coming up at the time in the early 2000s. It was becoming much more well known and talked about. But yeah, it's definitely something that being that I've been on that end of things and having birth, I gave all my births were completely different. And I had some better than others. And so it really has always just been in the back of my head that I would love to do what my doula did, and also just be that person that can just help, because not everybody has all the family around them and, or want that. So it's, I take my experience and the good and the bad, and I can bring that into these women's lives so that they don't have to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, that's smart. And you're right when you say that not everyone necessarily wants their family member standing beside them during this, because it's kind of like a new territory, I guess. And maybe for some people, it's not comfortable having your mom or your dad or whatever at your bedside when you're giving birth. It's
100%. And you never know what's going to come out of your mouth and be offensive or anything. And I always tell them, I'm not going to take anything you say personally. You can say whatever you want, and it's okay. So
that's hilarious.
But if it's a family member, they might not feel the same way. So a doula, definitely different.
It's part of the job.
That's too funny. Yeah.
Part of the job.
Oh my gosh. And it takes a village to raise a child too. I mean, it's like in this modern age, we're all like, have our little nuclear families, and, we don't talk to other people, especially over the last few years with COVID and isolation. And, I bet you're seeing that kind of ripple effects, with new moms and couples having babies now,
Totally. And everything is so online now. And I hear myself saying a lot, like, turn it off, stop following every single reel and thing, because what ends up happening is people end up spiraling and they get anxiety. And because there's a lot of stuff out there that, because a lot of, Canada and US is also different too, just with the way that our healthcare works. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there that people think living in Canada, they have to, be aware of. And it just becomes very, I think the levels of anxiety have definitely gone up in this new everything online kind of researching your own stuff. There's nothing like hearing it from a woman who's given birth 5 times, and I can tell you exactly.
I love it. That is so true, Marnie. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like there is something to say about like lived experience.
Yeah, totally. It's that old wisdom, right? And I can say I'm a grandmother now. I've been able to, I can really, I feel, and that's how it is. Doulas across the board, even doulas that haven't had children. I mean, we are experienced in so many different ways, whether it's in just training, but just in the experience. Every time we go to a birth, we learn something new. Like there's so much wisdom that we can bring into these families that have never done this before.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I think that is so true. And it is like just such a support, because I think there's, you almost need someone to help navigate through the whole medical system, or like, nowadays birth is so almost medicalized. Like it's, it doesn't have to be, but it's nice to have a person who's got your back, like an advocate for what your wishes are, that can help with navigating things, because you kind of feel like a pawn in the pinball machine, right?
Actually, it's interesting you say that, because in my notes right here, I have the word advocacy, because we do that for sure. Some women come in completely open to whatever. They don't really have really strong opinions. They just want their baby. Others have really specific needs. And it's really hard to do that when you're in the middle of labor. And often, even if we do it ahead of time and we, people make birth plans, but what ends up happening is sometimes it can just start to go sideways. And when things don't go exactly as planned, having that advocate in there, even if it's just the partner, just to be able to say, oh, actually, this is something she really feels strongly that she really doesn't want, or something she really needs. And so, I find myself doing that. But what we end up doing as doulas, because we are there sort of more as that background support, is we equip the partner to speak for the birthing person, so that, because when you're in the middle of it, you can't speak.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, I know. Well, I'm just thinking back
Makes
to
sense.
when we had our first baby, who's turning 22 this year. I can't even believe it. But things kind of did go sideways in terms of like birth plan, right? Like we had a whole idea, and then all of a sudden, oh, baby's breech, not turning. You're 3 weeks before, not a preterm, but almost like a preterm baby.
Yeah.
But
It's like, you're having
okay,
a baby tomorrow kind of thing.
tomorrow. And we were just like, what? Like it was our first baby. So we were just, it was, and I was a dietitian, and I was like hearing all the stories about babies getting nipple confusion, and oh my God, like I was so adamant that I was going to breastfeed, and oh my gosh, that was very hard. With, to keep that kind of our idea of a birth plan. And the birth plan kind of went out the window, but the thing that I thought I could control is the breastfeeding part. But even that was out of my hands because of just what happens in the hospital. And I was fighting with nurses. I hated to do this, but oh my God, it was so brutal. Like they were trying to give our baby formula, and I was like, no, I'm gonna do this.
On day 2, right? Like right out of the gate, they just wanted to start feeding formula, and Sandra was just advocating so hard, but she just had a C-section and was not.
And you're exhausted.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was it. Really, kind of, it was a really good reflection of like, having empathy for other people going through this whole experience, because you see what happens, even though like I've worked on the other side, like I've worked in hospitals, I've worked in healthcare, but when you're like in there as the patient and you're getting it, I felt bullied. Like I literally felt bullied by some of these nurses. Like, nope, this is what we're going to do. Your baby needs to be fed, and we're going to give her some formula. And I was like, no, Rob, you've got to make sure that you don't let them touch the baby. It was like, it was really hard. Holy.
It's really interesting to hear that, because now there is so much more research out there that is just not what's happening anymore in the hospitals. There has been, they call it I think it's called the Healthy Baby Initiative. And basically it's going across the board in hospitals that this, like the whole pro breastfeeding is really so amazing now. So that is gone. Like that stuff is over, and we don't have to worry about that, especially in Canada. It's just really, really cool. I was just actually at a birth, and it was just so amazing to watch the nurses helping the baby's latch right, like instantly as soon as the baby was born. It was, just so beautiful to see them just so pro breastfeeding. First hour is, everybody knows now, the first hour. My kids never got any of that. Like I think about it now, and I feel like I'm kind of jealous because of how different it is, and the whole skin to skin. The minute the baby's born, the baby goes right onto their chest, and they are encouraged to latch with, right, like before the doctor is even out of the room, the baby is already latching, and it's just so different and so beautiful. And luckily our kids turned out fine, and it's okay that they didn't get that. But man, I feel like even just for just postpartum mental health, it just has changed the game so much. So sadly, our kids are older and didn't kind of get that, but it's really, really great for this new generation.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's wonderful. And I mean, I know that there are some people, like you said at the start, that some people don't care. And I mean, if they had the experience that I had, I think they would probably be formula feeding their baby by now, like, because just the pressure I was getting initially, and just the fact that they were trying to put a bottle in the newborn's mouth. It's like, you know what? I really want to breastfeed. I really want to do this. And it was all about it was amazing how the nurse was saying, like, it was all about her own experience. She wasn't talking about evidence. She wasn't talking about the research. She wasn't talking about anything about that. It was just, oh, well, you have to bottle feed. You have to formula. The baby needs food now. And like just this kind of stuff. And it was just like, No, I actually know the baby's going to be fine for a day or two.
She's like, my kids were all bottle fed and they're fine.
Yeah.
Like that was her
line.
argument.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I feel like I could hear Rob saying, my wife's the dietitian. Listen, let her do her.
Totally.
I wasn't quite that. Well, I mean, I was my wife's dietitian, but that's too funny, Rob. Oh my God. That's true. Holy.
So, Marnie, I'm sure at some point, I know with Sandra in that case, I think that it had been like there wasn't that instant, like the baby wasn't latching on. There was an issue with that, and I think they became worried that, you know, a little early, but they were worried that the baby wasn't getting fed, and so at what point do medical concerns kind of trump the need of the patient? And
that's a really good question. Yeah. So we have basically a 12-hour policy that the baby stays in the hospital. When it's a home birth, that's a little bit different because it's midwifery care basically, but it's all the same. Like they watch very closely and they make sure that the baby is latching, that colostrum is being transferred, and you can see that, and also checking for wet diapers and, you know, like the first poops. Those are really, really important before they send the baby home. So if there was ever a concern, that is within the first 12 hours. So that's a pretty big window, honestly. Like they don't have to rush those kind of things. Once the placenta is delivered, the brain kicks in that the baby is now out. It's actually it's so crazy, nature. And just the new hormone of prolactin kicks in, and that's when the milk will start to form. So they give them a 12-hour window for that all to work. So this whole worrying about, you know, instantly it happening isn't a big deal.
Right.
Babies aren't born hungry. They have this all-you-can-eat buffet through the placenta, through their whole, you know, in utero. So once they're born, it really takes that long after they've peed and pooped for them to actually start to even experience what hunger even feels like. So it's a bit of a myth when people, you see a baby come out and it's crying and they say, oh, it's hungry. It's not hungry. It's crying because it needs that connection, and that child is looking for mom because its instinct, of course, is to suck because it will need to eat. But we give them a 12-hour window. So never is there really that big of a concern as long as there's, you know, baby is thriving and has passed all the tests, and then they wait to see, and, you know, the whole first latch.
Yeah.
And what about before the birth, as far as medical issues cropping up that weren't part of the birth plan? Like at what point do you sort of give in to what the doctors are saying or the nurses or whatever?
Oh, yeah, that's so variable.
Like how hard do you fight, in other words? Because I know with our second birth, Sandra wanted to have a vaginal birth, and it just wasn't happening. And we waited and waited and waited, and finally the doctor's like, "Kate, no more waiting. We're doing it now. Let's go." You know, like is that kind of what happens, or is it? Do you fight harder, or like, because the health of the patient obviously becomes an issue,
you know,
right?
and they look at baby's heart rate, mom's blood pressure. Like there are quite a few things that they do, you know, they don't really play around with when things like that aren't ideal. So even in whether it's the first birth or a VBAC or, you know, home birth or anything like that, the minute things start to sort of go off track, they won't wait to go, okay, there's, you know, we can't take any chances, you know, the baby, like you say, trump the need of having this beautiful birth that they've dreamt about.
Totally.
You know, sometimes you have to let it go.
Yeah, we did. We ended up having to let it go with, we wanted the VBAC, as you called it. So the vaginal birth after C-section with our second, and after, you know, I think it was 2 days of being in labor, and then the risk of infection because the water broke like 2 days ago and I was laboring and, you know, back and forth to the hospital. And then, it was just like, I was exhausted too, which totally sucks because then you're exhausted by the time you're actually having the baby. So the couple days after the birth is pretty Oh gosh, it's hard, right? Because the whole process is so exhausting for the baby and for mom and for the support people and the doula too.
And for the doula. We had a doula with that birth, and she was a massage therapist.
Yeah.
And so she was worn out because it was like constantly just like helping Sandra through it, rubbing her back, massaging her shoulders. And
shout out to Erin. Yeah, she was amazing.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, 6 hours of.
But good for you for trying. Like that's really great that you gave it another go. And now hindsight, you look back and yeah, it didn't go the way you wanted to, but there's your baby,
totally.
right? Like there's just,
it's like,
it's disappointing for sure. But when we see that our baby,
I love that you're talking about as a doula that you ask questions, like such important questions about like, did you feel heard, seen, or did you feel loved throughout this whole birth process?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because some people will say that they had a traumatic birth. And it's really interesting to learn that perhaps it wasn't even anything physically traumatic. Baby may have come perfectly fine, but if they weren't cared for, if they didn't feel that they were heard, if they didn't feel that their needs were met, they would call that a traumatic birth. And the opposite, you can have women who have had serious physical things go wrong and stitches for days, but they would say that was the most beautiful, empowering experience they ever had because they had this incredible team around them, and she was able to express what she needed, and she felt so loved and so cared for and so supported. And yeah, it's just quite interesting how, especially because we never forget a birth. It doesn't matter if it went easy or not. It's not like having your tooth pulled or an appendix out. So because it is such a spiritual experience, because you're connecting with this child that you've been carrying for 9 months, to be able to give birth that way and feel, so that's our motto with Culture of Life, is seen, heard, held, and loved. And I always go back to them after, and when we talk about the birth and we debrief, and I ask them, did you feel those things? Because that's our priority. That's what we do. So yeah.
Oh, wow. I love it. I love it. And I mean, there are women, I'm sure, that don't want to breastfeed, right? Because that's just, if they don't feel comfortable with that part of things. But you support whatever their wishes are, I'm sure.
Oh, of course. Yes. Yeah. And there are situations, definitely, even if it's a working situation where there's just no choice. The milk is most important. And that's the bonus of having the pumps and that kind of thing. So whether they're pumping or latching, it's the milk that we want the babies to have. And we also are so blessed, actually, in our local communities on Vancouver Island here, that we have a milk bank. And for those women who really just can't, for whatever reason, are able to use donor milk, which is amazing too.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful. There's some women in our prenatal groups that I do locally, or like over in Nanaimo, and they donate to the milk bank, which is because they just have so much milk. Like that's a great thing sometimes with getting things going with breastfeeding. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, but just to have that overabundance of milk supply that you can donate to for moms and babies that don't get that. So like what are the top 3 struggles that new moms have with breastfeeding success?
I bet the first one is latching.
Can you explain what that is, Marnie?
Latching, yeah. So the baby's mouth has to open to a specific way for the breast to transfer the milk well and not painfully. And it's not something that is just sort of it's an instinct for the baby to open their mouth, but it is not necessarily going to be a perfect latch, so that the whole mouth has a chance to suck properly and not hurt the poor woman. So we often, it seems to be a bit of a mantra, just watching, learning, seeing how it happens. Baby's mouth, sometimes they just want to kind of keep their mouth a little bit closed, and that, ends up with cracked, bleeding nipples, and you're not going to want to do that for very long.
Mm.
So that's a lot of what I do. First breastfeeding visit, usually once the baby's born, like when they're first born and they get that first latch, we don't really see too much of that because all the baby's doing is just sort of checking it out and, smelling and just kind of exploring, But so once they actually start to really start to suck, that's when I come in and assess the latch and see what the baby's doing. And it's very, very easy to see if it's good or not. And then I just show them tricks, and position is huge. How to do that in the first few days while they're waiting for just that whole, like you say, Sandra, it's just that whole first few days is so exhausting and so overwhelming. You're emotional, you're tired, you've been, maybe sore, like there's a lot going on. And so I just love, love, love to just be able to come in and just kind of change their position, show them a different way, put the baby in a more natural way. Sometimes they're sitting up and they're holding this baby and their neck is sore and the baby's, fussing, and I can just I kind of have my favorite little way of just laying back mom, propping her up with a bunch of pillows, putting the baby back on, showing her a real wide open mouth for the baby to latch. And then it's just probably the best part of my whole day is when the mom just goes, oh, it feels so much better. And it's beautiful. And there's just hope when she feels better and she knows what it's supposed to feel like, rather than this does not feel right, or there is no way I'm going to be able to do this, and crying because it hurts. It's not supposed to hurt like that. So, so that is definitely the number one thing that I do is correcting latch. The other thing is they're worried about low milk supply, and is my baby getting enough?
That's the big one that I hear. Like, what if my baby's not getting enough food?
Yeah, and it's really hard because with bottles, you can see the milk, you can see how much is gone. And so when a baby is breastfeeding, the only way we can really tell is how the baby is behaving. If the baby is satisfied, if the baby falls asleep, has been fussy, and then nurses and then falls asleep, that's a really good sign that your baby is full, there's ways to know. And then of course with, wet diapers, and that's always a good way to tell as well. But it gets to be a little bit tricky, because if you saw the amount of milk that a baby, brand new baby especially, only takes in, you would be surprised that little bit was enough. But their tummies are tiny. And they don't
size
need
of it, like a cherry, right? Like the size of a gumball or cherry in newborn.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So we do it. It's just over and over. Breast milk is super digestible. So the hard part is that they do it a lot. So they fill
often,
up, they pee,
often. Yeah.
Often they need to nurse again. But that's a really good sign, and actually just yesterday I was counseling a brand new mom, and I walked in the door and the baby was crying, and she just handed me the baby. I didn't even have time to take my coat off. And she's just like, take him. And she ran to the bathroom. Like she just needed to go. And the baby was fussy and crying. And so I was doing my very best to calm him down till she came back. And then we got her set up, and it was just so beautiful to watch him just completely melt into his mom's breast and just drink deep and fell asleep. And it was just, I was just like, that is what we want to see. This is us. We know. I could tell that he was drinking. I could see him swallowing. I knew he was taking it, and she felt good. Nipples didn't hurt. And then him just passing out milk drunk on her, with the little dribble coming out the side of his mouth.
Totally.
It was just, that is how you know your baby's getting enough. Don't worry about the ounces and the number, of ounces that you pump and you collect. There's a lot to know. And then the other one that I deal with a lot is engorgement and oversupply. And that is tricky, because that's when we can get into things like mastitis.
Yes.
So, and mastitis is an infection of the breast where you actually develop high fever and chills and all the things that we do not need to add to already the other parts after having a baby. So we watch that really carefully. And I often advise things like going into the shower and just hand expressing with the warm water just to give relief and just let that milk flow out. You're not wasting it. You will make more. It's okay. But hot compresses, just anything like to just relieve it. Usually it starts with a painful plugged duct. Doesn't always turn into an infection, but we really watch them carefully and tell them, the minute you start developing any sort of flu-like symptoms or fevers, you're going to have to go and get some antibiotics. That's a tricky one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I went through that a little bit with one point because I was definitely like there was a lot of supply once things got going and rolling. It was I remember like just always feeling wet, like you're just like the baby's got a wet diaper, you're like just milky, it's just like wet, like sweaty and but it's so beautiful too, because you've got this like human that's like your baby. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's
a very natural thing, but it's very hard to when you're not used to it. And we often tell our moms to just be prepared to, especially with company, when you want to show everybody your new baby, and we just say, don't in the first few days, they might just have to see the baby. Like dad can bring the baby out of the bedroom and people can see the baby, but they're not going to want to see you. You're going to be sitting topless in your bed, leaking all over, probably crying. Like it's not the time to have the baby shower or to entertain.
Totally.
I really, 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 really tell people that to save that for later because it's exhausting. It doesn't do anybody any good.
No, exactly. Oh my God, is that ever true? Because like you said, like that's the whole point too, is like if you're worried about having enough milk when the baby's first born, just the constant suckling at the breast helps to trigger the release of the hormone that makes the milk, so the prolactin. So if you skip the feedings and you start giving a bottle, then you're not actually stimulating the breast, and then you're actually like it's like a vicious cycle. So, the more the baby's next to you, touching your breast, touching your body, that all helps that hormone release. And like you said, Mother Nature has made this beautiful symbiotic relationship, like the more the baby's close to you and wants the milk, the more if you're relaxed and, letting it all work, then, it's so hard though. It's so hard it's such a brand new situation for so many people.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, just the benefits when we talk about this versus, like you said, if they're pumping, it's okay to do that once in a while if you need to. But yes, I always advise never to pump within the first few days because you are establishing that milk supply. And either you're going to be pumping more than you need to, and your brain's going to think you're feeding twins or triplets, and you're going to make too much.
Can you imagine?
Or you're,
wow, that's a whole new thing.
That's
too,
a whole
right?
other podcast. But just having that baby latching, it will teach the brain. The brain knows. But also just the oxytocin that is released when a woman is breastfeeding really helps with her mental health and the postpartum possibilities of postpartum depression. So there's, we can get into talking about thinking about all the things I could say about why breast is best. And I think we don't have a long enough podcast.
I know. But it's a learning activity for the baby too, right? Like the baby's learning to feed and they're sleeping a lot. They're exhausted from the birth and you're learning this. It's a relationship, right? It's not just you having to learn how to nurse. It's the baby has to learn how to latch. And so there's like this, it's a hard time.
Mm-hmm. It is. And yet at that time, so much is going on in that baby's brain as it is connected to their mother, imprinting her smell imprinting the bond that is going on between them. Hearing her heartbeat right there, that it's grown into, for 9 months. Like, there is an incredible amount going on that we can't see just by that beautiful act of breastfeeding. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Oh, it's so amazing.
It's a whole learning curve. I mean, basically you can't learn this stuff until the baby is born. Like, you can read books and everything, but you're not really fully prepared for what happens until the baby's actually born and in your arms, and then it starts. And that's why there's so much stress and anxiety of new parents and the mom especially, but the baby too, because it's like you said, the baby's learning and figuring everything out as well. It's the whole new dynamic for everyone involved, and it's challenging and stressful, and it's a crazy time for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's interesting what you say about, how much we can learn, and classes are great. One thing that I do with preparing is doing it before they are in the hospital and are given this baby, and figuring it out at that time. There's a lot you can do and you can learn and be prepared for, even just to prepare them for the hard stuff. Because I think that's what kind of happens. It's just a surprise when people don't realize all the things that they don't know ahead of time. So, we can practice the hold. I can't really practice the latch with dolls, but we can practice holding. We can practice, just what it feels like, but also just being prepared. And also having the partner support is super huge. Like, Rob, it must have been hard for you to watch, Sandra, and just, how can I help my poor wife who's going through this? And so when we encourage the partner to be involved, because they're the ones that are going to be bringing her the water and their food and, propping them up, or just everything you can do to support them, encouraging them when they feel like quitting, and cheering them on and saying, I know how much you want to do this. I know how important this is to you. You can do this. I've got you, that kind of, let me take the baby. You can feed the baby. I'll do the diapers, like, just giving as much support as possible. It's not just the mom that's doing the breastfeeding. It is the whole family that helps.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I know, like, men often want to fix things, right? But it's not the kind of situation where you fix something. It's just, like you said, it's support and understanding kind of the situation and how you fit in it and how you can offer support.
Yeah, you can't take the baby and do it for her, unfortunately.
No, exactly.
Not with the breastfeeding, but the other stuff. Like, I remember, Rob, you and my mom, so grandma, took our firstborn, and she, you guys had to do the first bath, the baby's first bath. And so, do you remember doing all that, Rob? Like, that was awesome. I could sleep.
It's a blur, but yeah.
It's a blur. We got it on video. I think
there's probably a picture.
There is. We have it like a video camera. I remember because I wanted to remember it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, that just little things like that. Just like, you can feed the mom. You can like make sure that she's comfortable and, help with the baby's diapers and just holding the baby and just giving the mom a bit of time to sleep. And I
think I was an expert swaddler. From all my years of making burritos. I was really good at swaddling the baby.
Oh my gosh.
So that was always my job.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so awesome. Yeah. And Sandra, just what you were just saying about them, feeding the mom, it just really made me realize, like, we have to be so careful not to give all the attention to the baby. That this mom who's had all this, she's done all this work, and then all of a sudden there's this sweet little new baby who is so cute, and everybody wants to hold it and see them and kiss it, and there's poor mom sitting over there, that in her dirty, milk stained, barfed on, who just wants a shower.
That's funny.
I love that you were talking all about the hormones, like the oxytocin and the prolactin, and like, what about breast milk, like, in itself is so important?
It is so the word magical is the first word that comes to my mind. Like what our bodies create is something that is really unreplicable
Yes,
in
yes.
formula. Especially, apparently, colostrum cannot be replicated, no matter how hard they try. Colostrum is the very first milk that is produced the minute the placenta is delivered. It actually can be produced even before the baby is delivered. Women are expressing it ahead of time to actually bring to the hospital to have for the baby, just in case whatever happens. Sometimes the babies and mothers are separated because of surgeries or whatever. So they always will have that on hand, which is really cool. But not everybody can do that before they're born. But the colostrum is the first milk, and it is so rich in vitamins and antibodies and everything the baby needs that it is not something that can be reproduced, which is amazing. It's just so cool. So
It totally is. It's so incredible, it's like, and the whole thing about the gut microbiome has like the research is just like taking off about that. And then the fact that we have these antibodies in the breast milk that is really helping imprint the newborn's microbiome, like that is such a huge piece of the puzzle too for their long-term health.
Long-term, whole life, for the rest of their life. They will have that. It creates a culture in their gut that will prevent allergies. It will prevent even childhood obesity, diabetes, cancer. Like it is
amazing.
It is amazing.
Wow.
It's something that is really hard to imagine. The other stuff that's really cool that some people don't know, and I only learned when I was taking my lactation counseling course, was the milk will actually change. It's a living organism, so it will change to whatever the baby needs based on the saliva of the baby. So the mother's brain can tell by the baby's saliva what the baby is lacking, and it will produce what the baby needs, that specific baby.
Wow. More hydration, like it might need more water. So like it'll have a different lacking. Like, cause there's the foremilk and the hind milk, right? Which is like when you start breastfeeding in your session there, it's like a little bit higher in like water and carbs. And then the hind milk's like rich and calorie dense and satiating and like getting them full. But I didn't realize it matches the saliva. Oh my God. That is so incredible. Did you know that, Rob?
It will.
I remember you saying something like that, the concentration changes, but it's amazing that the saliva kind of triggers that change. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, if the baby is sick, if it has a cold, if it has the flu, whatever that child needs, your mother will produce exactly what that child needs for that child. Also, there's night milk and day milk, which is so cool. If you are feeding your baby at night, your milk will have more melatonin in it, which will actually help the baby sleep compared to day milk. So what women do who pump is if they pump at night, they will mark it night, and they will know to give that baby the night milk at night so that it has the melatonin in it to help it sleep.
Wow, that is so, like you said, a living organism. It's just incredible. Like it is like a symbiosis relationship there. Like that is, I love it.
Yeah. Who knew? I didn't know this when I was breastfeeding my babies. And of course, I mean, the obvious reason is financial. It does not cost you any money to produce milk other than your food that helps with the nutrition. But the amount of money that is spent on formula, if it is a choice, we always say, we want to encourage women. Unfortunately, there are situations where you have to, and that is why we have formula, and feeding your baby is most important. We're talking about women who can breastfeed. The money that you save just by making your own this perfect milk for your specific child is really, there's nothing you can do better for your child.
Totally. And you got to eat anyways. I mean, so when you said you just the money to feed the woman, like the mom, they have to eat anyways, like if they're formula feeding or breastfeeding. So, I mean, you do still need the calories and the nutrition. So
That's
yeah,
right.
I mean, definitely like that is such a huge, like it's such a huge benefit is a financial. It's like, it just actually boggles my mind sometimes when I don't know, when I see people that it could just be so easy. And that's the other thing, convenience.
Oh, convenience. Yeah.
It's so like
Yeah,
you
I'll
always
tell you a
have
funny
them with you. You got the food
I,
there.
I have a funny story where it was like my children all nursed into toddlerhood. And that's another thing too we can talk about is just as, the longer the better, like just even just for that comfort. But I never really had a name for it. You know how some people will name their, they can call it num nums or whatever. And
That's what I
with
call
my
it.
oldest,
You're so funny.
Well, it seemed appropriate.
With my oldest, we just said nurse. We want a nurse. And one time we were at the park and he fell and he just came over and he said, nurse, nurse. And there was a nurse at the park. And she goes, do you need a nurse? And it was all he needed, and he just wanted his mom. And
I
so
need a wet nurse.
Yeah, exactly. Nurse. After that is when I changed it to num num. But it was just
That's
so
funny.
cool that he knew what he needed, and that was me, and it was the breast, and that was going to help him, because he was hurt. It had nothing to do with being hungry, and so just talking about that whole level of just the comfort and that bond with the child is something that again you just can't replicate. I actually just listened to a study and they were talking about women's moods. They actually hooked them up to the EEG, the little brain monitor, and they were talking about how those would change based on if they were holding their baby and looking at their baby, or pumping and looking at a picture, or just pumping. These poor, women sitting in an office that have to pump, that their brain waves were changing for the better just by holding their baby, and just that closeness and that bond. Going back to postpartum depression and anxiety and all those things, it's all, like you say, a symbiotic benefit to everybody in the family, but especially to that mother-child relationship.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so amazing. I just love it. Oh, it's such a magical stage of life too. Like it really is. I remember my mom, luckily for me, my mom breastfed my brother and I, and I remember when I was pregnant, and she would say, that was one of the best things in life is breastfeeding. And I think for me, that was a real big reason that I wanted to. Like I had good feelings about it. I had positive ideas around it. And I think that might be part of the problem with some people, if their grandmothers or mothers didn't breastfeed and it's foreign to them and it's like something we don't do in this family kind of thing, like that might be harder for that mom to decide to breastfeed, like if it's kind of shunned or people aren't as accepting about the whole idea in the family.
And certainly generations are different. I think, like I was saying earlier, where we are today, it is much more acceptable and supported. And sometimes I'll even see in airports, lactation rooms or special nursing rooms for, instead of just the bathroom, like there are much more acceptable norms now around breastfeeding, because it is becoming so, and because of this education, because of social media, and just being able to talk about, like, why wouldn't you, if you can, why wouldn't you? So hopefully those judgments are getting less and less and less around it. I think probably the harder part is the public breastfeeding, and how much we show and how much we cover, and what's natural, what might be uncomfortable for some, and I think that's still a bit of a learning curve in society, especially with the older generation. But there are ways, it's totally natural. It should be supported. It should be something that is celebrated. But yes, it can be done respectfully in public as well.
Mm-hmm,
Absolutely.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the older generation, there is some ideas that, oh, you're spoiling the child. They're just, they're just like, they're going to stay a baby forever. If toddlers are nursing, like, it's like, what? There's so much more to it. And they're not getting spoiled. It's the opposite.
Yeah, I remember feeling like that and wondering if it was ever going to end. And I remember my husband saying, "Don't worry, he won't be nursing when he starts school."
That's right. That's right.
Because at some point you gotta cut it off at some point. But they know, they do it themselves. Usually, they might need a little bit of help. But all mine nursed till they were 2 and 3, and it was great. And we have a wonderful relationship. So I hope it's because of that.
Yeah, I'm sure it helped. I'm sure, it's,
yeah.
It's like responsive parenting, I feel like, because you're responding to their need with your body. Like you are giving your full attention plus your body to them. Like that's
100%.
pretty amazing in this day and age with all our distractions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it is a sacrifice. It is definitely a sacrifice when you feel overtouched and the last thing you want is anybody else to touch you, and you've had this baby hanging off you all day. It is definitely a sacrifice that women do for their children. And yeah, it is. We do it because we know the benefit.
That's right. You hear that? All the kids out there listening, be nice to your mom.
No doubt.
Don't ever say I don't love you.
That's right. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. We could seriously talk forever. But Marnie and I are doing a great workshop in our local community all about, helping women who are going through this stage of life with being pregnant and wanting to breastfeed and just keeping their own health, up to optimal for their just basically this stage of life, and sleeping and eating well and moving and all the things to help you feel good. And I'm so excited. That'll be coming up. So, and I'm sure we'll do it again because there's a need. I think there's definitely a gap in services out there. And I think it'll be a great thing to connect with all these couples.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's something, again, like we were talking prenatally, prenatal education, giving yourself the treat, the investment in what is going to be coming is so worth doing rather than figuring it out when you're tired and exhausted. And it's sort of the last thing you want to do is try to learn anything else. So this collaboration with me teaching all about latching, all about the things we've talked about, colostrum, the benefits of breast milk, how the partner can support the birthing person, and this whole symbiotic relationship. And then Sandra, with your expertise and how nutrition, it just plays such a huge part in this and making that milk and just giving her the energy and the calories to keep up is just, it really is going to be a great little team effort, I think.
A match made in heaven.
Yours is amazing.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. We've known each other for how many years? Because our kids went to school together.
10.
So I think it's longer. Yeah. 15.
Actually, it is longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Oh my God. I know. That's so right. Good. We never had that idea before, but I love it. That's It's been a long time coming, as you said. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun. And it is something that I would love to do, we can talk more about this, but, to do it in person, but also maybe even just doing something online where it can be accessible for other people that aren't in our community, that can be done virtually,
Love it.
Because it's so, so, so important. I hate it to be limited to people where we live. So I'm really looking into how I can do more support that way, just through this magical internet we have.
Mm-hmm. Totally. This is great. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, there are listeners all over the world for this podcast. So, yeah, who knows?
Cool.
Like if there's someone out there that has a daughter who's going to have a baby, or who's having a baby themselves, or who has a friend, or who knows, we'll, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, maybe we can even put, contact info in the show notes. If they want to email or ask for support or more information, we can definitely do that. And then especially the information about our upcoming classes as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. I was going to ask, is there a website that you can mention, or?
Yeah. The website is, it's cultureoflife.co. Okay. So we can just add that in there. Sorry.
.co?
I almost gave the wrong website. Cultureoflife.co.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not .com, but .co.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Right on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. That was really fun. And I think Rob would say it's like, a stroll down memory lane almost.
Totally.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. It's so awesome to share this with you, because you are in it as well with all your clients. So, so I'm looking really forward to working with you. And yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a blast.
Sounds great, Marnie. We'll definitely add links in the show notes for everyone to find out more about your class and about the stuff that you're doing. So yeah, we appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. Wow. That was like like a stroll down memory lane.
I feel like I know Marnie a little bit better now.
And it really brought back a lot of memories for us.
I have to be careful with the word nurse around her, apparently.
You do. That's right.
Those are funny stories.
Oh, it's so funny.
You know what's neat is every woman out there who's given birth has those kind of stories.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those rites of passage that comes with giving birth. It's a story.
That's right.
It's however it goes, it's going to be a story. And it's always interesting hearing those different stories from different people.
Yeah, that's so true. I love the way you said rite of passage, because it really is. It's just like there's nothing quite like going through pregnancy and having a baby and trying to breastfeed. It's just like such new, unknown territory for someone who's never done that. So
exactly. And then it's not just the moms. I mean, the dads have some pretty fun stories too. And it all has to do with just being thrust into a brand new situation, and it's like, oh my God, what do I do? What is this? What is this stuff? What do I do with it?
That's right. There's like,
without being too graphic. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies out there about that, right? Like, I mean, because it is such a crazy experience. It
totally is. But I mean, it's an amazing experience, but totally crazy at the same time, which makes it makes for a good story fodder, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And plus learning about all the magic of breast milk and like the different things that it brings to the baby's lifelong health. Like, it's just incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, the fact that it changes as the baby's needs change, that's really cool. That just shows you how amazing the human body is. And yeah, it's mind-boggling, really.
Oh, yeah. It's like the more we're connected to nature and the more connected to our baby, our newborn, it really helps with those rhythms and just that symbiotic relationship, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, that was so good. I'm so glad we talked to Marnie, and I'm sure we'll bring her back on the show sometime.
Yeah, exactly. That was really interesting information. So thanks, Marnie, for joining us. If you're interested in more about what we are doing, you can check out our website. It's mywifethedietitian.com. We have a weekly newsletter you can subscribe to. You can send us your questions as well. We are always answering listener questions on our show. More than happy to do that. So you can email us at mywifethed@gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. All three. We're there sometimes doing fun things, sharing more information, sharing different tips and all sorts of different things. So check us out there. Give us a like, thumbs up, all those good things. And don't forget to share the show with your friends. That's super helpful to us. It also gives your friend something new to listen to. I'm sure they'd appreciate that. You can also rate and review the show. That is also something that's super helpful. Keeps things moving forward here, helps other people find the show, and makes us feel good. So that is it for today. We will be back on Wednesday with Nutrition Nuggets, something new and exciting coming up. So until then, have a great week, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on My Wife the Dietitian. If you like what you heard, don't be shy. Leave us a comment or review, and be sure to share our podcast with your friends. If you'd like to hear more, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media pages for updates, episode trailers, and other odds and ends. For more info and links on what we discussed on today's episode, check the show notes. We'll be back next week with another informative and fun-filled episode.